Hello everyone, at 1995 here in the video games and fanfiction plot with a new story for you all. It is called His Queen. If you guys don't know, it's another Transformers fanfiction, and I do hope you enjoy this story. And remember, I do not own the Transformers Prime series or this story. I give full credit to its author Syzzy WinterFalls 13 on Insanity. We sped down the road, trying to get as far away from Mech as possible. There's our destination point, Fowler said, making me look towards the train. The tunnel was just up ahead. Autobots, keep a tight formation, Optimus commanded, RC and B in front of us. We went down the slope, landing beside the locomotive. It was dark, the headlights only producing so much light. I watched the crates pass by us, and sighed in relief. I felt the vibrations of the tunnel's entrance collapsing, making sure the cars couldn't follow us. About time, I groaned, resting my head. B jumped on the crate, knocking on it. Okay, soldiers, I looked back at the men. You know what to do. The light blinded me as we exited the tunnel and drove back to the road. I'm blind, I hissed, covering my eyes dramatically. I heard jets. I hear jets. Do you hear jets? I asked, turning to Fowler. He nodded, looking out the window. Air support? He questioned, ours or theirs? I looked out my window, noticing the purple jets approaching us. Neither. Optimus, you have company, Ratchet said, referring to the cons. I think we noticed that, Ratchet, I retorted, hearing them launch their missiles. Optimus, I shouted, looking at the purple rockets. They hit our side, making Optimus swerve. AHH. Fowler and I shout, holding on for dear life. I heard a screech, and a snap. We won't be needing it anyways. The cab exploded, as we sped forwards. I heard the Decepticons transform, and we spun to a stop. Well, balls. I looked at the Eraticons, since I now know that there are different classes. Agent Fowler, Optimus started, gaining back my attention. I'm afraid that if you, Molly and we're to survive, it has become absolutely necessary to drop our cover. I stared at Fowler's shocked expression, and braced myself. He transformed around us, and I recognized which parts to hold on to. He stood up with us in his hands, Fowler coughing and gagging from the experience. I know that feeling. I smirked, and glared daggers at the cons. The helicopter circled above us, before departing. I was the only one who noticed. I felt Optimus shift, and set us on a ridge. Remain here, he said, looking at us. Molly, try not to get close to the Decepticons. I nodded, and stood up. For now, I thought, and stared down the cons. After a long road trip, Bulkhead said, walking towards the Decepticons, it feels good to get out of the car, stretch my legs ... and kick some tailpipe. The bots ran with him, and I stalked my ways forwards on the ledges. They advanced on each other, as I made my way to the top of the rocks. Stay out. Don't engage. Stay put. Don't engage. I repeated over and over, wanting to pound some metal so bad. Optimus right-hooked a con, and smashed two more to the ground. I am also guessing that B watches me practice boxing, cause he was getting the stance right and everything. I growled, eyeing the chopper. Come down here. I dare you. I watched the fight ensue, and started shooting my gun at the remaining cons. My aim wasn't all precise, but I did get one in the red mask. I could see Optimus fighting slower, and I heard the voices again. You are weak. Pathetic. You think he will ever appreciate you? Ever actually care for you? Your life is meaningless to him. You're nothing more than a bag of flesh and bones. I clawed at my head, digging my fingers into my scalp. Please, stop. I screamed, but as usual, no one heard me. I didn't actually make a sound in real time. Just the whimper. Tears flowed down my face, as I backed into the rock. Look at you. Why would he even protect you? You can't take on a nightmare, or even a dream. The way you feel isn't mutual. He is just doing his job. And what do? You just sit there and look pretty while the council makes all the decisions. All those people, Dead, because of you. You must be mental to think you ever had a chance. Those words echoed in my head, overlapping one another. I heard the walkie-talkie go off. Prime. Molly. Do you read? Silas got wise to phase 2. I heard from my earpiece, and noticed Optimus getting cornered. I understand. He shouted. Everything started going into slow motion. Optimus was slammed in the helm with a log, held by a con. Optimus. I screamed, and started running to where he fell. Oh, no you don't. I heard a voice growl, and I was snatched by the claws of a Decepticon. Optimus. I screeched again, fighting the clutches. Somebody help me. The con squeezed her, making her gasp in pain. You're not as hard to capture as they said you were. The con mocked, clenching her small frame. You're going to regret this. She wheezed, eyes growing dull. Con let the chopper reach the try, Molly thought, squeezing her rib cage as tight as she could. Molly. Molly. Fowler called into her earpiece. Fowler. Tell Nick to take out the jerky in the ceiling panels. She breathed out, trying to conserve her oxygen. One joke. The con squeezed her again, making her scream. Optimus groaned, shaking his head. He spotted the train, with the helicopter perched on top of it. His optics widened, and he sat up. They can't acquire the device. He thought, and heard a scream. Molly. He stood up in reaction, climbing up the slope. He reached the top, pulling himself up. Optimus. He jerked his helm up, narrowing his optics. Molly was struggling against the con's grip, clawing his digits. Prime growled, and ran towards the con. Punching him in the chest, the Eradicon lost grip on Molly, letting her fall in the air. This time, Optimus caught her on time. I. Molly gasped, I'm going to kill you one day for scaring me. Optimus chuckled, and held her close to him. Mech is on the train. He stated, we must stop them. Molly nodded, standing up. We'll never make it in time. She claimed, it's going too fast. Optimus nodded, and sat her on his shoulder. Hold on. Optimus took long strides as we caught up to the train. I held onto his shoulder, trying not to fall. I know that smell. Damn it, Myco. I thought, and glared at the helicopter. That scarred Silas was sitting in the chopper, waiting for them to come up with a DNGS. Optimus, I breathed, Myco and Jack are on there. He looked at me, then the train. He grabbed me, and transformed into vehicle mode. The copter pulled away, retreating. What are they up to? I asked myself, looking ahead. Smoke rose up from the tracks around the curve, and I realized what they did. They blew it up. I looked outside, eyes darting from subject to subject. Optimus, let me out. I demanded, unbuckling the seatbelt. What? He shouted, Molly, I can't do that. You just got out of harm's way. I am not putting you back in. I growled, back already starting to stretch. Optimus, no matter what I do, I will be in harm's way. I shouted, but right now, there is a nuclear weapon on board that train with two 16-year-olds. He seemed taken back, and I took that advantage to open the door and jump out. I heard the tear of skin, my leathery wings popping out of my back. My bones start to shift, and heat rushes through me. In a few seconds, I am bounding down the valley as a 20-feet-tall dragon wolf, spines retracting into my back, and a long tail swaying behind me. I ran as fast as I could to the front of the train. Optimus arrived with me, and I jumped onto my hind legs. Here goes. I start pulling the train back with Optimus, digging my back claws into the dirt. Gah! I gasped, and snapped my wings open, causing drag. My pads started to burn, and we halted the train at the very break of the tracks. I panted, snake-like tongue sticking out. I looked up, ears twitching against my horns. Mech! I growled, dropping on all fours. The helicopter hovered over us, before leaving. They will get at real soon. I hissed, and sat next to Prime. Molly. I turned my head, seeing Myco waving at me. Yoo-hoo. I smiled, waving my fingers. Glad y'all aren't dead. I sighed, and walked to the crate. Yes, you may get on. I gave permission, knowing that Maiko most likely wanted to ride me. Yes. I laughed as she climbed onto my back, in between two spikes. So soft. She sighed, petting my fur. Molly, I turned my snout, tilting my head at Optimus. What you did was foolish and hazardous. I lowered my head in guilt, flattening my ears back. It did, however, make sure that the train do not crash. He continued, looking at me. That's a compliment in my book. I grinned, turning back into a happy state of mind. How are you so good? Maiko asked me as we raced on Rainbow Bridge. I practice. I say bluntly back, sticking my tongue out. The screen flashed, and the winning sign came up, booyah. I smirked, leaning back. Oh, screw you. Maiko stuck her tongue out at me, huffing. I chuckled, and turned to look at Optimus. Good of a time now. I think, sighing. I blink, and got up. Optimus? I asked nervously, approaching the edge. Yes? He answered, turning to me. Can we talk? I rubbed my arm. Alone? He looked to Ratchet, who seemed slightly amused. Prime turned back to me, nodding. I breathed in, deeply, and tucked my head in. He picked me up, and started walking into a hallway. I felt so embarrassed, my face growing hot. We went up to the top of the plateau and he sat down at the edge, where the sun was setting. Are you okay, Molly? He asked, setting me down. I bit my lip, and shook my head. No. I am not okay. I answered. I have been having nightmares. Some of memories, some of what I would have been, some of my fears. All of them end up with me waking up crying. I wavered, looking down at my feet. There is two things they all have in common though. I whimpered, experiments, and you. He stared at me, servo resting behind me. Explain. He intoned, the blue of his optics enlarging. The memories of when I was being experimented on. The ones of what I would be as me being chased in dark hallways by a creature. It looks like me, but with some differences. Then, it is me being captured by the doctors, being injected with chemicals, being strapped to a table and combined with technology that allows them to control me, and being trapped in a glass box, with no escape. I wiped tears from my eyes, and kept talking. The part with you is usually at the very beginning or at the very end. Sometimes I don't see you, I just hear you. I started clenching my fists, and Optimus moved a little closer. I started hearing voices recently. They torture me. Saying I'm not good enough. That I'm pathetic and weak, that I shut my mouth, not wanting to say any more. What else do they say? Optimus asked, remorse in his optics. I don't want to tell. I mumbled, curling up. My brother usually comforts me when this happens, back there getting more and more frequent. I don't know what to do. I started crying, my throat stressing on my vocal cords. I was picked up, and lifted to Optimus's faceplate. You didn't have to be embarrassed to tell me about that. He said, petting me with his index finger. I said before that I'll always help you if you need it. And I stand by my word. I smiled softly, and purred. I just wish they would stop. I sighed, my tears drying. I leaned into his finger, letting him caress me more. It comforted me, lulling me off to a nightmareless sleep. She fell asleep in my servo, and I carefully stood up, not wanting to disturb her. I walked back down to the main room, seeing that the children have already left. What did she want to talk about? Ratchet asked me, as I walked past him. That I cannot tell you. I replied, stroking her hair with my digit. Ratchet frowned, and walked off, no doubt going to fix another bug. I smiled, and looked around. My optics landed on the couch, and I walked towards it. Lying her down, I carefully made sure she wouldn't fall off. She curled up tighter, using her arms as a pillow. I smiled at how peaceful she looked, how she looked when we were at the lake. I spotted a blanket, left here when she and Maiko were watching movies, and reached for it. I laid it on top of her small, delicate frame. She smiled in her sleep, curling up into it. I smiled, my face plates heating up, noticing how she, even though can handle the cold, prefers warmth when asleep. I tucked a piece of hair that fell in front of her face behind her ear. I checked on last time to make sure she was comfortable, and started walking to my birth room. I couldn't help but look at her one last time, and smile. Good night, Molly. I walked down the halls, thinking about her once again. Well, that's the ending of that chapter. I do hope you enjoy this video. If you like to see more, remember to hit that like button, subscribe to this channel and leave a comment down below. Until next time.